I thank the gentleman for yielding, the Speaker for yielding, and I'm very happy to join with Mr. McGovern and Mr. Lewis on this extremely important piece of legislation. In my state of Vermont, and I believe all over this country, one of the great concerns that the middle class has is the high cost of college education. Everybody knows that in order for our young people to earn a decent living, it is increasingly imperative that they have a college degree. And at the same time, everybody also knows that the cost of a college education is soaring. It is soaring in the state of Vermont. It is soaring all over the United States of America. So you have folks in the middle class who are working longer and longer hours to keep their heads above water, and then they look at what the local college or the good colleges in this country are asking, and they say, how am I, who make $20,000 or $25,000 or $30,000 a year or $40,000 a year, going to be able to afford to send my kid to college when the best schools in this country now cost over $30,000 a year, and many cost $15,000, $20,000 or $25,000? And what happens if I have 2 kids or 3 kids? How can we afford to send our kids to college? And the answer is, it is increasingly difficult for those families. So we have the outrage that all over this country, millions of young people are unable to go to college or unable to go to the college of their choice because they can't afford it. And this is absurd. It is not only unfair to the young person, it is unfair to the family, it is unfair to this nation. What an absurd policy it is that we waste the human intellectual potential of millions of people who want a higher education. How absurd it is that in the global economy we throw in the towel to competitive nations and say we are not going to have the most competitive, best educated workforce in the world. What kind of stupidity is that? What kind of an absurd sense of national priorities is it that says that we can afford to spend huge sums of money on B-2 bombers, that we can give tax breaks to billionaires, but we are not going to help the working families and the middle class of this country be able to afford to send their kids to college? Now, I know that many of the people in the Congress understand that in countries throughout the world, in Great Britain, in Scandinavia, in Germany, in France, the cost of a college education is not $30,000 a year, is not $20,000 a year, is not $10,000 a year. In many cases, it is zero, because those countries understand that it is a very wise investment to make sure that as many of their young people as possible can get a college education. And we should learn something from that. What Mr. McGovern and Mr. Lewis and I would like to do is to double the amount of money we're spending on Pell Grants. And some people may say, doubling it, boy, that's a lot of money. $7.5 billion a year more. Friends, that is 3 B-2 bombers. There are people in both the Democratic and Republican parties who want to increase military spending by well over $100 billion in the next 6 years. We give as a nation $125 billion a year in corporate welfare to large corporations who don't need that money. There are people on the floor of this House now who are saying Bill Gates needs a tax break. Billionaires need a tax break. Well, if you could spend billions on corporate welfare, billions on wasteful military spending, billions on tax breaks for those who don't need it, we can certainly afford $7.5 billion a year more for the middle class and the working families of this country, so that we can move toward that day when every person in this country, young, middle-aged, old, will be able to get the higher education they need. This is a smart investment for America, and I congratulate Mr. McGovern and Mr. Lewis for their work on this, and I will do my best to see that it passes. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back.